Today we're going to be discussing the common pitfalls of parts washers, and we're going to be understanding exactly what those are. Let's get into it. Now, before we dive into explaining the pitfalls of parts washers, I kind of want to explain exactly what they are. And I want to go ahead and mention that what I'm standing beside of, by definition, is a parts washer, but it's not what I'm talking directly about. We'll get into this thing a little bit later. Now, a standard parts washer almost looks like a sink, has the same resemblance. There's typically two ways that you interact with it. So there's a nozzle that's up top that just dispenses the water or solvent that you're using, and it allows you to kind of scrub and work with that part up top. And then there's typically some sort of brush that also has a liquid that is pushed through it. That way you could scrub the part and work with it. Now, these are typically open top machines, meaning water can splash out, but you're able to directly interact with it over top. There's no sort of cabinet that is housing all of this. And they also have limited filtration. Most of the ones on the market work by sedimentation, so they just pull off the top and the grease and whatnot that you pull off goes to the bottom. Some of them have sorts of oil filters, others have actual skimmers, but it all depends on which one you get, and that's kind of what we're going to get to later on. But to explain exactly what a parts washer is for, is to take a dirty part, whether it has grease and grime, it's to manually scrub all of that off and leave you with a part that you can actually use again. Now, the first problem with your standard parts washers are that they are limited by power. Now, what I mean by this is the water that is actually flowing over your part, or the solvent, depending on the use case, is not pressurized. It's typically at a very low pressure, and you are relying on the manual scrubbing action to actually clean your parts. Now, this can be good if you are working with something that is very delicate, whether it's very thin metals or whatnot. This actually allows you to be more deliberate in your pressure that you're applying, but in most cases it just means that you are having to do more manual work, and you're not going to get as consistent of a result because you're relying more on you physically interacting with that part rather than the machine doing the majority of the work for you. Now, the next problem with your standard parts washers are that they have insufficient filtration. What I mean by that is kind of what I mentioned earlier. A lot of them just rely on sedimentation to filter out the larger particles. Some have oil skimmers, some have actual filtration that it passes through. It all depends on which one you're actually purchasing, and that's something that you have to look for whenever buying one. There's no point in washing a part if you are recirculating dirty solvent or water back onto it, because the quality of the finish is what you're going after here. And again, if you're recirculating contaminated water or solvent over that part, there's no point in even rinsing it. So that's one of the big things you have to take into consideration when you're actually purchasing a parts washer, is the level of filtration that it comes with. My next point can be viewed as a problem, or it can be viewed as a benefit of standard parts washers. They use harsh solvents in some cases. If the use case requires it, solvents are a very good way of removing something like a stubborn grease or grime, because it actually helps to eat away that. But again, with most parts washers, you are interacting directly with that part, which means you're also interacting directly with that solvent. It's not in any sort of cabinet where you're protected or shielded from it. And those solvents also produce vapor, so that's another thing you have to keep into consideration whenever you're interacting with these. There are certain chemicals that you can use with a parts washer that are not defined as a solvent. They are typically an aqueous-based detergent, and they are better for you as well as for the environment. That's another thing to take into consideration when you're working with these parts washers, is that you have to have someone actually come and take away the leftover solvent or chemical or water if it's contaminated from your plant or shop, depending on what kind of waste is inside of it. The next thing on my list is a little bit of a nitpick, but it's something that I would like to see included on most parts washers, and that is a dryer of some sort. If shop cleanliness means anything to you, you know that having water spots or oil spots across your shop is annoying. So being able to quickly rinse that part and degrease it and then dry it off inside of that same station keeps your workshop much cleaner than if you were to leave traces of water behind everywhere that you go. Now, my next point depends greatly on the manufacturer. It's something that we take pride in here at Vapor Hunting Technologies, but that is a lack of maintenance and repairability. Now, with a lot of these parts washers, they are designed to be a cheaply made product that only last you for a couple years. If it breaks, you're just supposed to buy another one. We don't personally believe in that here. That's not why we produce this equipment. We produce it to last for generations. And also lack of maintenance. What I mean by that is there's no way to actually service it to extend the life cycle of that machine. Things fail, it happens, but being able to actually maintenance and service it and hopefully extend it is something that we look into here at Vapor Honing. Again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier with lack of filtration. If it doesn't have proper filtration, you're pumping sludge back through all of your components there. That's going to greatly degrade the longevity of that machine. So making sure that you can A, service the pump, B, that it has good filtration. All those things are very important when it actually comes to the maintenance side of things. And repairability, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things, because buying something that's slightly more expensive and being able to fix it if it breaks versus buying something that's cheap and having to buy a new one every few years is a much, much better option. Now, the last point on my list for the common pitfalls of parts washers is lack of containment. Now, you can get parts washers that are contained. Again, the one I'm going to talk about here in just a minute is, but whenever you're working in your shop, you don't want to be splashing this thing everywhere. You want to keep it as neat and nice as possible. You also don't want to have solvents all over your floor. Having something that is contained also allows you to do something very cool, and that is let it be heated. With most solvents, again, especially if you're using a chemical that's not defined as a solvent, but more of a detergent, a lot of those actually work better whenever they are heated, and you do not have to worry about the risks that are associated with solvents. So having something that is contained, that you can operate inside of, keep your workspace cleaned, as well as gain benefits from a heater, in my opinion, is very, very important. Now, I know I've been hinting at this the entire time, but what I'm standing beside of is not a standard parts washer. I know I said I would get to this towards the end. This is a high pressure parts washer. Specifically, this is our Hydroblast here at Vapor Honing Technologies. This thing was created to completely eradicate all of the pitfalls that are associated with a standard parts washer and create a system that is more efficient and more user-friendly. Now, it does have some downsides. The biggest one being that you cannot use a solvent inside of here. If any of you guys know, high temps and high pressure with a solvent, not necessarily a recipe for a good time, but we can use those aqueous-based detergents that I was speaking about earlier, and the high pressure really negates the necessity for using a solvent. To explain how this thing works, it's very similar to the standard parts washers that you guys have seen, but again, this thing is completely enclosed inside of this cabinet here. It's HDPE. This thing is built to last. We actually dropped one of these cabinets off of a 60-foot man lift, and the only place that had any damage was right here on the door. If that had been a metal cabinet, it would have been completely gone. With this thing, of course, you get your wiper up front, so as you're spraying around on the inside, you have clear visibility the whole time. Nice rubber gloves on the front, that way you can actually interact with the part. On the inside, you have a spray wand here. Now, this thing is adjustable, so you can see there's fins on the end here. You can adjust your spray width as well as your actual spray pressure, depending on what you're working with. This model here can reach 1200 PSI, and we do have variants that can reach 4000 PSI. That is insane. We had a belt housing off of a large truck that we brought in that just had oil and grease that was caked on it. I'm talking like an inch thick. And with the 4000 PSI variant, I was literally able to go in and completely strip it away in one pass. So when I say these things work, I've seen it and I believe it. Another big thing by comparison to the standard parts washers, again, with your standard parts washers, even when you're working with that brush, you have to manually get into each of those crevices on a part, especially if you're working with something that has fins, like any sort of old motorcycle head that has all the fins. You have to get down inside of each one of those and manually scrub them away. That's no problem with this thing. Turn it down to a fine spray and wipe over it, and it will completely remove that grease that's on there. Again, you are using the pressure that this thing is able to produce to negate the need to sit there and hand scrub on a part. And in my opinion, this thing is 5 times more efficient, if not more. But I'm gonna stop talking about it. I'm gonna show you exactly how this thing works and let you guys form an opinion on your own. All right guys, so we've got this piston loaded in here. I'm sure you guys saw the B-roll from earlier and just how much gunk there is on the inside of it. This thing is from one of our junkyard motors, so it's about as bad as it gets whenever it comes to engine cleanliness. Currently, we do have some aqueous-based detergent in here. It's the detergent that we sell and we use. We are not at the max amount. We are actually lower on the amount we put in here just for showroom use, but this is going to be a very good demonstration of what this thing can do with just pressure alone. And I'll kind of show you how you just wipe over the part. So in a little over a minute, I have completely degreased and dried this part. And you saw how caked up this thing was on the inside earlier, and it's completely gone. High pressure is much better than having to sit here and manually try and scrub and clean a part. The Hydro Blast was created specifically to fill all of the common pitfalls that parts washers have, and I think we've succeeded. Let me know what you guys think. Put your opinions, comments, thoughts on this thing in the comments below. If you are someone who works with automotive parts or works in the industrial space and you understand the benefit that having something like this that is heated with proper filtration and high pressure can provide to you when it comes to actually rebuilding something, you can contact us directly at 828-202-5563. Also check out our YouTube channel. We have tons of videos using this thing that you guys can check out. And also check out our website. We have a ton of information listed on this thing. That way you can understand exactly what you are getting yourself into whenever you purchase one of these awesome machines. Again, let us know what you think in the comments below. If you want to get one of these, you can also get it through our e-com store or call us at 828-202-5563, and we will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.